Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook that was born in Vegas. I'm Katie Mox, and we're just less than a week away from the NFL draft. Things kick off Thursday in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So we've got a wonderful draft preview for you. So let's go ahead and welcome in the stars of the show. We've got Dave Richard of Fantasy Football Today with me in studio, and our draft analyst, Mike Renner. Good to see both of you guys. And I have to tell you, as a betting person, I've been fully into the tournament and then straight into now the NBA playoffs. I almost don't know what's going on in the draft. So I'm really thankful to be sitting with both of you. And I do feel like there's a lot of people that maybe aren't as up to speed as I am. So Dave, why don't you walk me through some of the biggest storylines of the draft this year?
You're not missing one of the deepest, greatest drafts in NFL history. Somebody asked me earlier today, how would you describe this draft class? And I said, not bad. And he said, I don't want my team making picks in a draft where the players are not bad. It's really strong at the top. I think it's a bad draft if you need a quarterback or an offensive tackle. Fantasy football is really my beat, so I'm looking at the running backs, receivers, and tight ends. Wide receivers are just solid, Katie, but those running backs and tight ends, there are going to be some talented players at both of those positions, and running back especially, very, very deep.
Okay, so Dave says it's an okay draft. It's not a bad draft, but he does like some certain positions. Mike, what are some storylines that you're looking at?
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with Dave there. I think the biggest thing to me is how jumbled it gets after kind of the top three. We know the top three at this point. It's Cam Ward, it's Abdul Carter, the defensive end from Penn State, and it's Travis Hunter, the Heisman winner from Colorado. But after that, the consensus on these guys is all over the map. Like, just for example, I have Jalen Walker, the Georgia linebacker / edge rusher. I have a number 5 on my board. There are people who I respect, who I think are good analysts, who have him outside of their top 30. There are players in this draft who could go as high as number 6, number 7, or could fall all the way to the mid-20s. It truly is a draft where the evaluations after the top group are all over the map. So it's going to be a throw your mocks out the window sort of round one, in my opinion. That's what I'm going to be watching for.
Okay, well, that sounds like something pretty exciting. So every draft typically has a position that it is really strong in, and you kind of hit on it already, some of the positions that you're liking. But what would you say is the position this year that really has a wealth of talent?
It's going to be the running back position, and it's headlined by Ashton, Jeanty from Boise State, the runner who nearly broke Barry Sanders' single-season rushing record and had more yards after contact than pretty much every college running back had, just total rushing yards in 2024. Really special talent who didn't quite show all that he could do last year for the Broncos. I think he's one of the 3 best players in this draft. And you think about running backs, and the league tends to devalue that position. But look at how Philadelphia just won the Super Bowl with Saquon Barkley as a big factor in helping them get there. Ashton Jeanty said it himself. He can do that for an NFL team. He's hoping to be a top 5 pick so that he can help somebody make the Super Bowl with him at running back.
How do you feel about that, Mike? Do you think the running backs are the strongest in this class?
Oh, 100%. So last year, I believe we only had 4 guys in this running back class drafted before the end of day 2. This year, we could see double digits. I think at least we see double digits. Like, it is a loaded running back class. To me, that is the strongest position year on year. But I think this tight end group is awesome. I see at least 6 guys out of this tight end group becoming starters very early on in their career. I think the edge rusher group is super deep, not just day 1 guys that we all know about, but day 2 as well. And then I think DT, there's some very good top-end talent, and then there's a lot of great run defenders on day 2 in this defensive tackle class. So those are the positions I'd keep an eye on.
Let me ask you this, Mike, and actually with you too, Dave. You guys say that the running back class is the strongest. You mentioned Saquon Barkley in the year that he had, and let's be honest, Christian McCaffrey the year before. Do you think the narrative is changing a little bit, Mike, with running backs? Because the last couple of years we've seen that position be the reason why teams won Super Bowls, and then we look at this class.
I think it is because just the nature of how teams are playing defense differently. If everyone's in too high, all of a sudden it becomes advantageous for you to run. Like, there is kind of a point where if they're going to ignore the running game, where all of a sudden the running game becomes more valuable. And I think we saw the Eagles really hammer that out of the park. Now, it's still the running back in terms of success for a running play is still like the third most valuable. It's the call, it's the offensive line in front of you, and then it's the running back. So it's still not necessarily an end all be all. Just because you got a good one doesn't mean you have a good running game. But I think we're going to see more and more teams chase to try to get that elite running game. And obviously, to get an elite running game, oftentimes you need a Saquon Barkley type. You need that elite back behind it.
You want to have that elite back. And don't get it twisted. This is still a quarterback-driven league. There are still going to be a lot of quarterbacks. The teams that have the great quarterbacks, they're going to be the ones that continue to make the playoffs. And that's kind of a problem with this year's draft class, Katie, is because there aren't a lot of good quarterbacks in this draft class. There's guys that you kind of squint a little bit and you see, okay, that guy could start for me. That guy might be able to play for 2 or 3 years. But it's not a great class for that. So the zig to the zag is going with the run game. And because it's so deep here, and because there's already a lot of great running backs in the league, teams are going to load up on that position, run the ball, try and manage a game, take advantage of those 2 high looks.
Well, you set me up perfectly for my next question. Let's talk about the most important position on a team. It's going to be the quarterbacks. I think for a casual, it's like we were looking at Cam Ward, we're looking at Shedeur Sanders, and then to your point, kind of drops off from there. Maybe you'll enlighten me on some other players. Sure. How does this quarterback class stack up to some of the better one? Not great.
No, not great.
Not like the Kenny Pickett class, though.
Oh, I think it's I think every class is better than the Kenny Pickett class.
Amen.
No offense to the fellas from that year, but look at last year's draft class when it was, quarterbacks went the top 3 picks, rightfully so. I don't know if Cam Ward, I don't know how Mike feels about it, but I don't think I would have Cam Ward ahead of Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May if he were in last year's class. But this year's Cam Ward with last year's prospects, I don't think he'd be ahead of them then either. And I'm not sure Cam Ward would be ahead of next year's draft class at quarterback, especially if Arch Manning comes out from Texas. But I do think Cam Ward has the potential to be a top 12, top 15-ish type of NFL quarterback, someone that I'm probably going to end up drafting a little bit of in fantasy football. But everybody else in this class, there's one other guy, Jalen Milroe from Alabama, who's got some traits that teams will love, but he's got to work on some things. All the other quarterbacks have to work on some things.
Right.
Milroe has a lot to work on, but if he fixes it, then he could be up there as one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. It's just, I'm squinting again. It's hard to see Jalen Milroe suddenly becoming an accurate thrower inside of 15 yards and being able to read coverages and play well, because we didn't see a lot of that last year or the year before.
What do you think, Mike? Do you agree on this when you look at the quarterback class? Any Brock Purdy's somewhere in there?
Well, that's the thing, is that's kind of the ceiling of these guys is Brock Purdy. That's the biggest thing of this quarterback class. After Cam Ward, there is not a guy who has it. So it's Cam Ward and Jalen Milroe are your 2 guys who I would call plus NFL tools in terms of arm strength, in terms of rushing ability, in terms of just like things that they have in their arsenal that would put them above average by NFL quarterback standards. Everyone after that, your ceiling is kind of just maybe they can start for you. And that's like Brock Purdy, right? His ceiling is kind of, he doesn't have a strong arm. He's not going to ever push the ball down the football field. He can make some good decisions, be creative outside the pocket, but he doesn't have any plus traits. That's how I see this quarterback class. And so I do think Cam Ward would have fit in last year's first round. He would have been ahead of Michael Penix Jr. and J.J. McCarthy for me, behind the other 4. But after him, massive drop-off, in my opinion.
Okay, so we have to go quick on this last question, but I'm feeling how you guys feel about the quarterbacks here. But let's talk about Abdul Carter, probably the most exciting defensive player. He's minus 400 to go third to the Giants. Mike, is there any chance that they don't take him and maybe they try to go quarterback at Shedeur?
I don't see it. Carr's too good, one. And I think they could still be in range to get Shedeur at the top of the second with maybe a little trade up, but I think it's still very much a possibility that he falls down boards and they can trade like a second and a fourth, go up and get him.
What do you think?
They're one of a few teams that could go and get Shedeur Sanders late first, early second, sort of in that range. They might have to jump in front of Pittsburgh in order to do it, but I wouldn't expect them to take Shedeur Sanders at 3. That sounds crazy to me. What they could do, they've already got a decent amount of picks. They could trade down if they really don't want Abdul Carter. I don't know why they wouldn't. Every team would want Abdul Carter. If they traded down, someone else could trade up. They'd have a bevy of picks, and then they can maneuver as they want to get the quarterback they want, and then another good edge player. Mike talked about how deep that position was.
Oh, so exciting exciting things potentially happening for New York, and boy, do they need it. We got to take a quick break here, but when we come back, we're going to talk about some bets for the NFL draft. Yeah, we talked the storylines. Now we're going to figure out where they go. Check in on those odds next here on The Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge, and we are going through our best draft bets now. Dave Richard and Mike Renner with me here today. So in the last segment, guys, we talked about Shedeur Sanders and his odds to go top 5 hover around plus 250. Dave, is that good value for a guy that's garnered so much attention?
That's what he does. He garners attention, and so the odds makers don't have to boost the value because they think that people are going to bet it, but they shouldn't. I don't think it's good value, and I've seen it go as high as plus 325. I don't think that's good value either. I just look at the top 5 teams. 2 of the 5 definitely do not need a quarterback. The other 3, one of them is going to take Cam Ward. The other 2 probably don't have Shedeur rated high enough to take him at 2 or 3. There could always be a trade, but I just don't see Shedeur Sanders being a top 5 pick, even with the draft class not being rich at other positions. I think there are enough players for those other 4 spots, not the Cam Ward spot, where they'll get taken ahead of Shedeur Sanders, so I wouldn't take him there. I think Ashton Jeanty's a better bet to go top 5
than
Shedeur Sanders, and he's at plus 250 last I looked.
Okay, so Mike, same thing for you. Do you agree with the price based on the attention that he has? And then when you look at some of the other names to go top 5, Ashton Jeanty, you just said, we're looking at Tyler Warren, Jalen Walker. Is there somebody else that's got a better value?
Yeah, I agree. I would not bet him to go top 5 at that number. I wouldn't even bet him to go top 10 at that number. I think we're going to see a stumble from him, and it's because what he has said, but also the fact that the 2 quarterback needy teams at 2 and 3, well, they have elite prospects sitting there. There's a difference between Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, and everyone else in this draft class, and you're just not going to pass on those guys if you're an NFL franchise for a guy like Shedeur Sanders who doesn't have elite physical tools, right? Who just may be capped with his ceiling when you don't have that arm strength that the Patrick Mahomeses and Josh Allens of the world have. So I don't think it's going to happen. The guy I like, I agree with Ashton Jeanty. I think it's a possibility should the Bears fall in love with him and want to go trade up. But I also kind of like the Tyler Warren plus 2,300 if you want to get a little crazy. The New England Patriots could be a guy who fits what they want to do there at number 4 overall.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to you with this one, Mike. You talked about Ashton Jeanty maybe going to the Bears. They have the second shortest odds to get him if he's the first running back off the board at plus 230. The Raiders are the favorite at plus 110. Where do you think Jeanty goes?
I think ultimately it's the Raiders. I don't think the Bears can necessarily afford to go mortgage a lot because 10 to 5 is a big jump. You're going to have to pay a price to do that. Just historically, the trade value charts, it's going to take like a second rounder to go up and do it. They do have those 2 second rounders, but I think they need those 2 second rounders, and that's kind of where it starts to become a good draft in terms of the value. So I just don't see it happening. But that's why I think the Raiders is probably the best bet here.
What if I gave you a couple of long shots for Jeanty?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first of all, I can't rule out the Patriots from taking him at number 4. Maybe the Bears don't even get the chance to trade up for him there. They're at plus 1,800, 18 to 1 on Ashton Jeanty going to the New England Patriots. I don't hate that one bit. And then the Broncos, they've talked about adding players at running back and wide receiver and tight end. They put a Band-Aid on the tight end with Evan Ingram. I wonder if they view Jeanty so boldly as a guy who could do it all and be a terrific weapon. And we know that Sean Payton loves to throw the ball to his running backs. Jeanty is a former first-team all-district high school wide receiver, and now he's playing running back. I think Denver could be in play for him as well. That's at plus 2,000. Your 49ers, by the way. What if he slides? What if we're crazy about all this?
Don't do it to me.
And, Christian McCaffrey can't play forever. Plus 15,000? I'd put a sprinkle on him going to the 49ers. Why not?
First of all, that's what dreams are made of, right? And this is the fun part about the draft before it happens. You could say things like that and get excited, but I don't know that would happen. But I love it, and I appreciate you for saying that.
At 150 to 1, I don't mind trying.
I'm going to sprinkle it. I'm going to sprinkle it just for vibes and for money, hopefully. Let's talk about some top 5 picks here. Michigan defensive tackle Mason Graham, plus 120 to have his draft position be over 5.5. Dave, is there any chance that he falls out of the top 5?
I think think there's a chance. I really like the talent. I think he's Michigan's best defensive lineman, probably the best defensive lineman in the draft, not including Abdul Carter. But I wonder if a team could fall in love. There's a couple of paths to it. Number one, if Jeanty goes 4, that pushes an offensive lineman down to Jacksonville at 5. They could take him. If the offensive lineman goes number 4 to New England, and I'm thinking about Will Campbell as that offensive lineman, then what if the Jaguars take Jeanty at 5? Or what if they take a player at a different position at 5? That pushes Mason Grant off. What if the Jaguars trade out of 5 to a team that takes Ashton Jeanty? So I think there are a lot of paths to Mason Graham falling out of the top 5. The problem is that at plus 120, that's not a juicy enough price for me to bet it. So I would probably pass on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if Graham goes somewhere between 6, 7, 8 overall in the draft.
Yeah, do you agree with that, Mike? Are you passing on this? Can you see him falling a little bit?
Yeah, I'm passing on this because, one, I think it's just a great fit for the Jaguars. They've said, James Gladstone, GM, said, like, we are going to draft defensive linemen. That's why we didn't sign any in free agency. We want the young guys to play. And then you just got to think about the path to this happening. It's something like the Bears trading up to 5 and drafting Ashton Jeanty, the Jaguars themselves drafting Ashton Jeanty, or Ted McMillan going 5. Why not just bet those options instead of the plus 120? They're all much longer odds. So that's where my head would be at for that one.
Okay. And I'm also just going to take Ashton Jeanty to the 49ers at 150 to 1. Okay. So let's talk now. Our best early NFL draft bet that you really like. Mike, I'll start with you.
I like Abdul Carter plus 480 to go number 2 because I've been saying the duo of Myles Garrett and Abdul Carter would be one of the best duos in modern NFL history. Like the potential for that to have 2 top 5 edge rushers, we just haven't seen in like a decade in the NFL since DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller were on that Broncos team that won a Super Bowl. So I'm interested in that. I know they've gassed up, GM Andrew Berry's gassed up Travis Hunter a bunch. But like it still seems like a pick that could be very much up in the air. And with that long of odds, in my opinion, I think it's worthwhile. And then I also like Ted McMillan plus 400 to go top 10. I think there's a chance where a guy like that, someone falls in love with him and he still goes top 10 just because the difference between him and how good you feel about him and the next best wide receiver in this class, I think is big. He reminds me of Drake London, and Drake London went top 10. So I think there's still a chance he ends up there.
Yeah, I found that McMillan prop at plus 500. So plus 400 is great, but I did some pretty good shopping. And now that I said that, and if he goes top 10, I'm pretty sure Mike's going to come up to me and be like, hey, you owe me lunch now. You made more than I did on Ted McMillan going top 10. Look, we've talked about the quarterbacks and how we don't love these guys. And I think the NFL is going to show us the exact same thing. What about under 2.5 quarterbacks taken in the first round at plus 340? That's some good juice. All you need is 2 or 1 quarterback to go in the first round. There aren't a ton of teams that need a quarterback. It's Tennessee. They're going to get theirs. And then you've got Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and the Giants. I really don't think there's another team waiting in the wings to take a quarterback, especially one of these quarterbacks where the upside is very shaky. I like that prop a lot at plus 340.
One player that we didn't talk about, guys, really, I mean, you mentioned him, but Travis Hunter, where do you think, like, top 5, top 10?
He's going top 3.
Top 3.
If he doesn't go to Cleveland, the Giants are going to take him because he's such a unique athlete with huge upside to make a difference at wide receiver or at cornerback or both, and a team can flip back and forth between them. I don't necessarily believe that Travis Hunter can play 60 snaps on both sides of the ball every game.
No.
He's not Superman. But if he focuses on one side one year, he could potentially focus on the other side the next and still moonlight at the other position. I think if he goes to Cleveland, he's going to be a wide receiver. I think if he goes to the Giants, he might play more at cornerback. So it's really going to be an interesting dynamic to see. But the fact is that he's a really good football player. Yeah. And both those teams could really use good football players. So Travis Hunter will be a top 3 pick.
Okay. Do you agree with top 3? And also, I thought what you said is interesting, Dave, that if he goes to the Giants, he'll maybe play more cornerback. Yeah. Right. And he'll be over. Do you think that too? Do you think it's based on where he goes and that's the position he plays?
I think so. I do think the Giants, though, they signed Paulson Adebo. You have 2 guys you drafted highly the past 2 years at corner that he still would probably focus more at wide receiver there. Now, that's assuming Deonte Banks, takes a step forward, whatever, is a former first-round pick. If the bottom falls out on him, then, maybe you're flipping Travis Hunter to more cornerback. But that's kind of the beauty of it and why he's not falling past pick 3.
Okay, good stuff with you guys. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're talking the NFC, my conference, first position drafted bets. That's all coming up next here on The Early Edge. Keep it locked on CBS Sports Network. Okay, we are back here on the Early Edge. We got a couple new faces here. Mike Renner is with us again, but Emory Hunt and Jason La Canfora, welcome to the show, to the two of you. We're looking at the NFC right now and team position draft bets. Let's start with the New Orleans Saints. They have the 9th overall quarterback. Makes a lot of sense considering Derek Carr is injured right now. It's at minus 130 to take the quarterback. And then we got defensive lineman or edge, tight end, or offensive lineman. Oh, the odds have shifted here. Quarterback now plus 110. Emory, you're from New Orleans. What say you?
I'm going offensive line. I feel like Spencer Rattler is actually pretty good enough to start games in the NFL. We saw that last year, and we got word around the league from other NFL coaches like, hey, man, this dude Spencer Rattler is actually pretty doggone good. So I think they bypass that. When you look at what they are looking at up front, Trevor Penning has struggled as a former first-round pick. Ryan Ramczyk has retired, who was an elite player. So now there's kind of sort of a void up there. You have a question in Penning. You lose Ramczyk. Now you have to figure out, okay, what can we do? Pick number 9 is probably a good spot to take one of the top offensive linemen in the class. And also you have a guy in Kellen Moore coming from both Philly and Dallas, knowing how important the offensive line play is. And he's a former quarterback as well. So I think they go O-line, especially at this value.
I like going line of scrimmage here, truthfully, either O-line or D-line, just because it's in Mickey Loomis's DNA. The only pick over the past 6 years that they've made that hasn't been a line of scrimmage is Chris Olave, wide receiver. They have gone trenches year after year after year in the first round. They draft those high-value positions. So, yeah, quarterback, it could be a need with Derek Carr's shoulder. I just think that they are going to go business as usual and not try to reset things at the quarterback position right now. If it's not Derek Carr, if he's hurt, it's going to be Spencer Rattler, in my opinion. So I think they go trenches.
Their quarterbacks have sucked since Drew Brees hit a wall 2 years and they paid him 2 more years while he was a game manager. Their old buddy Sean Payton went to Denver. He drafted a quarterback who Mock Draft Nation pooped all over for about 3 months before the draft. No way will Sean Payton take him there. He doesn't have a big enough arm. Oh, look how many schools he bounced around to. Oh, Bo Nix isn't even a first-round player. How'd that work out? Mm-hmm. They're taking a quarterback. The first column I wrote about my draft props late March at SportsLine, my favorite prop at the time, by far, plus 1,100, Saints to draft a quarterback. They had 3 position groups ahead of quarterback for the Saints. I said, what planet am I on? They don't have a quarterback. They're going to take Shedeur Sanders, and that's even before the Carr injury stuff came out. Although Carr's been washed. They would have loved to have gotten out of that contract. The one thing you can't be as an organization, you can't be faceless. You can't be boring. They've got an owner who doesn't meddle. She's not interested in a whole lot of things other than the bottom line. Mickey Loomis has a lot of autonomy. He doesn't have complete autonomy. The faces of the franchise are either retired or should be retired, or they're injured. They've got to start selling the future. They've got to start selling hope. And if you tell me Shedeur Sanders can't beat out Spencer Rattler, stop. No, they need a quarterback. They're going to get the second best quarterback in this draft, and they're going to get him at 9th overall. And if he sits for a little bit, so be it. But no, they can't punt for another year and hope that Arch Manning stays in school. Guess what? Doesn't stay in school. Guess what? I think he's going to stay in school.
Yeah.
So, no, they're taking a quarterback. You just can't get the value there now. I had another 0 attached to that when I played it.
Okay. All right. Wow. That's why you got to get in early on SportsLine to get those. So let's talk about a team that is selling hope, right? The Chicago Bears, they got their quarterback. They got a good coach now. They have the 10th overall pick. When we look at these odds, pretty tight. Running back, of course, the favorite at plus 165. Tight end, 320. Goes down from there. Renner, I'll start with you. What do you think they do at number 10?
I really like the tight end fit. Now, obviously, running back in play too, but I think that would call a trade up for Ashton Jeanty. But I do know they love Travion Henderson, the Ohio State running back. I'm not sure they'd stick at 10 and draft him. I think there's a possibility they could get him at 39 or 41, the pick they have in the second round. Or if they trade down, they could get him. But I think Tyler Warren's just too perfect for Ben Johnson's offense, gives them the sort of flexibility that, with that long of odds, I think that's my favorite play.
Emory?
Well, I look at the fact that this is a prime trade spot for me for Chicago based on what they did in the offseason. They really have stockpiled both sides of the line of scrimmage. So it kind of removes offensive line and defensive line from the pick. And to Mike's point, they may be now in a position, hey, we can go up and get the one guy that we want in this first round, which could be Ashton Jeanty. It could be a wide receiver, or it could be a tight end. It could be anybody, right? So I like more of the trade, but I'm leaning more toward running back or tight end because of how well they've done so far in free agency.
Yeah, I think they're going to sit there at 10, and either Jeanty's going to be there or Warren's going to be there in all likelihood, and I think that's the pick. So, look, for the return you can still get on this, and it's not quite what it used to be. You could put $50 on each of those top two there, and you're going to make your money back either way. I'd be really shocked if it was something other than what looks to be pretty chalk here. Like, when you're making these bets, you've got to evaluate the evaluators. And, look, Ryan Pace is into splash. Like, he's into household names. Like, he's in cover his backside mode, and they're trying to build a quarterback up. And they're going to either be able to get, in all likelihood, a freak-of-nature tight end who's got size and matchup possibilities that are far beyond anything Colt Kmet could ever dream of, or he's going to be able to get the best running back in the draft who looks to be a true three-down difference maker. So it is what it is, and trust me, 2, 3, 4, 5 days from now, you're not going to be able to get the value you can now. So I'd sprinkle a little on both.
All right, so now we're with the 11th pick, my San Francisco 49ers. Talk nice to me, okay, with this one. Looking at defensive lineman edge, favored but also tied with offensive lineman at plus 180. Mike, you went line of scrimmage earlier. Do you think that's where the Niners go?
Yeah, and specifically defensive line of scrimmage, because it's just gotten so bad there. They do not have anyone outside of Nick Bosa right now that can rush the passer. They do not have an impact player outside of him. And just another one where John Lynch's track record, three of his first four first-round picks were defensive linemen until Trey Lance, and then they trade all their first-round picks away. And then now they're in the spot they're in because of that. So I think it's defensive line because you can get offensive linemen later. It's hard to get the true Nick Bosa's goes number 3 overall, right? It's hard to get their number 2 overall. It's hard to get those true elite players any later on than the first round.
Yeah, I think they're taking a corner or a safety. That there is so much depth at D-line, and they think they're pretty good at evaluating it. And they are. And I've got scouts I trust who tell me, like, you could find a starting caliber D tackle or 3 in every single round of this draft. And they think there's 30 guys who are going to play in the league, maybe 32, and provide some value depending on where you take them. I think they lean into that. Lynch is a defensive back. When you look at the teams that have shut down Kyle Shanahan's offense, and I'll go back to the Baltimore Ravens going out there on a Monday night and having Brock Purdy crying on the sidelines because he had no idea what Kyle Hamilton was doing. Katie, you saw it. I saw it too. He didn't want back in that game. Did not want it. Lost his MVP that night. I think Nick Manwari is absolutely in play here, or they're going to have their pick of any corner. You've got to be able to play the ball in flight. They've resisted that temptation, but having that joker, that difference maker, that shapeshifter who can allow you to play everybody else somewhere else, I think is something they're going to lean into. I think Mike McDonald in their division is going to lean into it too.
I look at San Francisco in a different way. The reason why we say they can put anybody back there at quarterback or anybody back there at running back is because they are always consistently strong along the offensive line. So I'm leaning offensive line here. Calvin Banks out of Texas can play guard or tackle. Gives you a little bit of versatility there. Donovan Jackson, no one made more money in the postseason than I did telling people to take Notre Dame to beat Georgia than Donovan Jackson and Will Howard with how they played in the postseason for Ohio State. Donovan Jackson can play guard or tackle, and you have to start thinking in terms of getting younger behind Trent Williams. We know we love him. He can't play forever. You need someone that can play tackle, but you also need someone to replace Aaron Banks on the interior. I think offensive line at pick 11, get one of the premier guys in this class there.
All right. Well, I said talk nice to me, and then we had JLC talking about Brock Purdy crying on the sideline with that Ravens game. So it didn't follow directions there, JLC, but appreciate this insight nonetheless. We have to go quickly here. The Dallas Cowboys have the 12th overall. We'll throw the odds up on the screen here. Emory, where are they going?
Man, Zach Martin retired. That's a future Hall of Famer. Tyler Booker in Dallas. Book it. I'm going no line.
What do you think, Mike?
I like wide receiver or O-line. Truthfully, wide receiver, they're probably going to have their pick of the top wide receiver in this draft class. But just historically, they've drafted a bunch of offensive linemen in the first round, and more often than not, they've hit on them. So I think from that perspective, when you got that big need at right guard with Zach Martin no longer there, very well could be the pick.
JLC?
Yeah, I'm going wide receiver. $60 million for Dak Prescott. Jerry likes drafting wide receivers. They've been pretty good at it. They've got to take some of the heat off of CD Lamb. And I think Jerry, frankly, likes drafting wide receivers. And who's going to tell him he can't?
Who's going to tell him he can't? Nobody could tell him that he can't do anything as far as I'm concerned. All right, we need to take a quick break here, but if you like what you saw from these guys, you want to get some extra value, JLC let you know there was an extra 0 on one of his picks earlier on SportsLine. We'll give you 60% off a quarterly plan by using my promo code MOXIE. Head over to sportsline.com/join or scan that QR code on your screen. And when the early edge continues, we are going to the AFC. We're looking at first position drafted bets for the AFC with our guys here. Stick around to the early edge. Welcome back to the early edge here with our guys, Mike Renner, Emory Hunt, and Jason Canfora. Let's do the same thing, fellas. Let's look now at the AFC. The Jags have the 5th overall. We'll throw up the odds on the screen right now. I'll start with you, Mike. Where do you think they go?
Now, ultimately, I think they do go Mason Graham, the Michigan defensive tackle. But I think if they trade down, if the Chicago Bears, we talked about earlier, trade up and go get Ashton Jeanty, and they're down at number 10, I think all of a sudden T-Mac, Tyrell McMillan's in play. So I think wide receiver, pretty a long shot there for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't think he's going to play at 5, but if they do trade down, I think it could be back in play.
Yeah, I think this is where Ashton Jeanty could fall. Maybe it's a trade, but I also look at that team, and Tony Baselli is involved in their front office now, and I don't think they're taking an offensive lineman. But he knows how important the run game and Fred Taylor was. You've got a rookie offensive-minded head coach there who, frankly, is basically being charged with salvaging Trevor Lawrence, right, where others have failed, although Urban Meyer doesn't really count because I don't think he tried. Regardless, I could see them looking at that running back and saying he's a difference maker for us. He's going to help us at the line of attack, at the point of attack. He's going to be explosive for us. He's going to open up all kinds of possibilities underneath for Trevor Lawrence and our passing game. And I ran it by our buddy Disco Pete Prisco, who is still pretty plugged in Jacksonville. And Pete thinks it's in play. So that's good enough for me.
Yeah, I'm going chalk with defensive tackle. But I like Mike's point about them trading down because if some teams, let's say the Bears or the Raiders are looking at a running back and maybe they are trying to play off one another, Jacksonville has the catbird seat and say, hey, you want Jeanty, come get him, and they can trade down and still get their guy. I'll go defensive tackle, albeit via trade.
All right, so now let's look at the Raiders here. And they have the number 6 overall pick, and it looks like running back at plus 110. That's pretty in line with what we saw with Ashton Jeanty being the first running back off the board. Is that where they go, Emory?
I don't think so, man. I know everyone focuses on Ashton Jeanty and Ashton Jeanty this, Ashton Jeanty that. Ashton Jeanty had a baby. I get it, right? But here's the thing. The drop-off between Jeanty and Hampton, in my opinion, or Henderson, is not that big of a deal. But when we're looking at the Raiders, you also need a receiver. And that drop-off may be a little bit more steep than it is at the running back position. So I have them going receiver at Tyrell McMillan, who I think is the top one in the class. Get Geno Smith a target out there on the perimeter, because right now all he has, albeit a good one, is Brock Bowers.
Yeah, I think this is where Jeanty ends up. So if it's not super minus money, right, I think it's still a good bet because I just don't see giving up what it's going to take to go from 10 to 5 to get a running back. And I don't see a team who has a first-round running back on their roster still on a rookie deal taking one number 5 overall. So that's why I think Jeanty ultimately ends up here still.
Again, the columns I've written at SportsLine, guys, I've been putting T-Mac here for about a month. And it's partly hunch, partly talking to evaluators and that kid's mentality and who would mesh with him. And I look at Tom Brady, and Tom Brady never got any creature comforts from Bill Belichick. He always, hey, I'm going to turn this DB into a wide receiver. Hey, we're going to try this. Yeah, you got tight ends, but you don't have wide receivers. And he's got a chance to get a best-in-breed guy, especially if the running back's already gone. And again, I think Jacksonville could take him at 5, or that could be a trade. They've got Bowers, as you guys noted, so it's not going to be Warren. I don't see them doubling down there. And I could see Pete Carroll being on board with this. We can get a running back later, but they've got to prop up Geno. They've got a couple years with Geno. They've got a couple years with Pete Carroll. And Tom Brady, as we know, is in win-now mode. And if he falls in love with this wide receiver, and I have a little suspicion that he has. They're not going to care about people saying he's overdrafted or this or that. So, yes, I've placed a lot of wagers on McMillan going top 10, McMillan number 6 specifically to the Raiders.
Okay, so let's talk about the New York Jets. Kind of a dumpster fire of a year last year with the quarterback situation and then, of course, with their coach. They went out, they got Justin Fields. So it looks like offensive lineman is heavily favored here at minus 145. Mike, is that where they go?
I think ultimately it is. If I had to bet, I think Armand Membu is the pick here at number 7, the Missouri offensive tackle. But all the things I said about Tyler Warren being the perfect fit for Ben Johnson's offense at number 10, Chicago Bears. Well, Ben Johnson's offense is now the New York Jets offense with offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrand coming over from Detroit. So he's also a perfect fit for the New York Jets. So he very well could be in play here, but I still think offensive line, even if the money is really, minus 165, not great.
Mm-hmm.
I love the 8.5 to 1 on a D lineman here because this could be for me where Mason Graham could be there. And we're talking about a generational D-line draft. And if there is we know at least one quarterback's going, right? We think at least one offensive lineman. We know Hunter's going. Maybe it's 2 offensive linemen before him. Maybe a running back does get in there. Like, I've come up with a bunch of scenarios where Graham's there. And that's a defensive-minded head coach. And that defense slipped the last 2 years, really, especially against the run. It really came to a head last year. Like, I don't know. That could be a lot of value getting the potential best D lineman in a generational D-line draft. So that value still really screams out to me.
Anytime you have a mobile quarterback, 2 things will happen. The running back that he's paired with will have a phenomenal season, his best yards per carry average in his career. We've seen that before with Justin Fields. The other thing we'll see is a tight end will be also a heavily featured person in their offense. You go back to Randall Cunningham and Keith Jackson. You go to Vince Young and Bo Scaife. You look recently, Cole Kmet, and guess who? Justin Fields. You have one of the best tight end prospects we've seen, one of the more versatile tight end prospects. So I think you go tight end with Tyler Warren because, man, this offense with those 3 running backs they have, along with this tight end, that wide receiver, and this explosive quarterback, look out AFC East.
Look out AFC East, and look out if you're watching the show because we've got early best bets coming up. We do need to take a quick break here, but if you like what you're hearing from these guys, make sure you sign up for SportsLine. You can get 60% off an annual plan with the promo code WINNERS. That's what they've been giving you all hour long. Head over to sportsline.com/join or scan that QR code on your screen. And we've talked about the NFC, we've talked about the AFC, we've talked about the storylines. How about early best bets? We got Emory and JLC sticking around to give their best next on the Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge. Still here with Emory Hunt and Jason Canfora. Fellas, let's talk about some early bets here. The total number of quarterbacks drafted in the first round, that line is set to 2.5 with the over juice to a whopping minus 450. Emory, how confident are you that there will be 3 quarterbacks drafted in the first round? And it says here, is that worth laying the big number? No, it's never worth laying that big of a number. But Emory, talk to me.
Yeah, it's not worth laying a big number, but I do see 3. And to go back to something JLC said earlier in the show, if Shedeur Sanders is there at 9, yeah, you take him because that also means that the Giants and Browns have done something egregiously wrong in letting the best quarterback in the class fall past him, especially the Browns with Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett on their depth chart. That will be insane. So I do see 3 quarterbacks. I think the third one won't be Jackson Dart. It'll be Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, it may be Milroe. Look, I'm pretty confident 3 are going, but I do not have a definitive spot. And talking to evaluators, like, do I think somebody trades back into the back end of the first round for Dart or Milroe? I do. I have a fair amount of conviction in it, but I can't tell you exactly where. I can't tell you exactly when. And for the way that's priced, I want nothing to do with that prop.
Cut minus 450. I don't know who's laying that. All right, JLC, it's time to get a little loosey-goosey here. Let's get a bold prediction for the draft. What you got for us?
I mean, I've got a few. I mentioned McMillan. Like, McMillan in the top 10, you can get a lot of value on that. McMillan 6th overall, you can get a lot of value on that. I think the kid Shamar Stewart could be the second defensive, 2 defensive backs in the draft. I think he's defensive lineman taken in this draft after Abdul Carter. I also think there's a chance that a team like Carolina likes him more than we might know, and that he goes top 10. So those are a couple of things that I've sprinkled on that you can get real value. And Nick Emanwari as it'd be number 2 after Travis Hunter, but he's obviously 2As. Emanwari as the, I guess, second defensive back taken. Like, wouldn't totally shock me if somebody took him in the top 10. We talked about the 49ers. I think he's in play there. He's absolutely in play with Miami. And it doesn't have to be a corner that goes first, that goes first out of that position group. So I think teams like him a whole lot more than the mock drafts have let on.
I say 3 running backs going round 1, and everyone is focusing on Ashton, Jeanty, but you have a more explosive back in Emory Hampton. You have a triple threat type back in terms of running, receiving, and pass protection in Travion Henderson. So those 3 guys, I think, going round 1 in the wild card. People laughed when I said this a couple weeks ago. Sean Payton. I've seen Sean Payton take Reggie Bush 2nd overall. I've seen him take Mark Ingram in the 1st round. He is not shy about taking a running back in round 1. I think we see 3 guys go in the first stanza.
Okay, I like that one. Let's talk about favorite early bets here. Emory Shedeur Sanders is a name that we have heard as someone going probably top 3, top 5. I went 2, 3, 5 there. Where do you see Shedeur Sanders going?
Top 3. He's going 3rd overall. That's my best bet. Because again, if his last name, if Jackson Dart had Shedeur Sanders tape, we'd be saying he should go 0 overall. Get the contract ready. The draft starts at 2. Like, this is an easy layup, and so many people are going to be so wrong when this dude balls out as a rookie because he has the highest floor. I don't care about the ceiling, but the floor can help you win right now. Giants got the best scenario. They can win now while still developing the quarterback of the future.
Katie, I like to sort of sprinkle on, and these haven't fully populated in all markets, but going kind of chalky the first 3 or 4 picks and laying some money on the top 5. You can get a lot of value here. So, like, I think it's going to be Ward. I think it's going to be Hunter. I think it's going to be Carter. I think it's going to be Campbell. And then I kind of playing around with Jeanty 5th overall. Now, again, a lot of places are only doing top 3, top 4. They will get to top 5. And I will definitely be sprinkling on those guys in that order as the top 5 picks.
Okay, that's Jason LaCanfora and Emory Hunt with their early draft picks. Appreciate y'all for coming on the show today. And if you want to see more from them, then make sure you check out The Early Edge. It's the daily SportsLine betting podcast. It's easily digestible, 20-minute show every day on the YouTube channel. You can watch now by scanning that QR code on your screen or listening wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for hanging with us. Have a great day.